Welcome to the Sacramento Injury Law Podcast.
Welcome to Sacramento Injury Law Podcast. I'm Lisa Mosby, your host, and today we're joined by Brian Jacobsen from Aiken and Jacobsen. With decades of experience fighting for injured across Northern California, Brian and his partner Lee are here to help you navigate the legal aftermath of an accident and secure the recovery you deserve. Brian, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
My pleasure. Let's start with the basics. What are the absolute first things someone should do after a crash, both for their physical safety and their legal protection?
Well, the first thing at the scene is after the accident, you want to self-assess and make sure that you're okay. Make sure that a lot of times if the airbags go off, you're going to see smoke in the air. Make sure that there's no fire in the car so that first thing is if you're okay, exit the vehicle, make sure you can get out safely, that you're under control. And then sort of once you're out of the car, assess the scene. Do you need to call 911? Are other people injured? Are there other people in your car? If so, proceed to get them out if you can do so safely. Once everyone's out of the vehicle, then start figuring out what else to do. Calling emergency services, start taking pictures of the scene, getting information, that sort of thing.
And in those first few days following an accident, what are the most common blunders you see people make that end up damaging their injury claim later on?
Well, the first thing I would think is they do nothing. They think that everything is going to be okay. So the first thing I would tell them is take care of yourself. If you feel hurt, usually adrenaline kicks in for the first few hours at the scene of the accident, first few hours after the accident. So again, take care of yourself. If you, after the accident, start to feel bad that day or the next day, go to the doctor, get checked out, make sure that you're okay. If there is something wrong physically, follow up and do what you need to do to get yourself better. The other thing is within a day or two, I would start reporting it to the, if you've called 911, maybe the police have come to the scene. You want to make sure you go that route, get that taken care of, but also report it to your insurance company and report it to the other person's insurance company if you have that information. The one thing that does come up that is a mistake is don't give any recorded statements to the other side. One of the things that I've seen a lot of people do is they give a recorded statement to the adverse carrier. The only purpose that that's going to solve is they're going to use that against you. That's the sole thing that they're going to do is they're going to try and use whatever you say to them later on down the line against you. And again, that's not a good thing because they're not there to help you. They're there to make your life troublesome and make it as hard as possible for you to get a fair settlement or fair evaluation later on in your case.
Makes sense. They're in it to make money or save money, just like we all do. They're in business. Is it always necessary to call the police to get an official report, even for what seems like a minor fender bender?
Yeah, it's not necessary. I tell my clients the same thing is it's always good to try and call the police. The police will, what I've found is most of the time they won't come out to the scene. If there's blood involved or broken bones involved, more than likely they will come to the scene, but they will tell you whether they're coming or not. And again, you're right. Most of the time they won't come to the scene, but it never hurts to try. A lot of times stories change from when you're at the scene to when you're not at the scene. So if you can get the police to come out, they're a neutral arbitrator, so to speak, is if they're not witnesses, it's always good to have somebody come out and say, here's what I saw, here's how the cars were positioned. That's why it's always good to get photographs while you're at the scene, if you can do so safely while you're there.
I think back to a time when my dad was in an accident with a deer. He greeted him in an unfriendly manner, and he's like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. I showed up. He called me. I showed up, and he ended up, saying he was fine the first couple of days, but had a the seatbelt mark across his
Sure.
chest that showed up a couple days later. And we often hear of people say, I feel fine right after the impact. And you led to this a little bit. Take care of yourself, get things done. But what immediate medical documentation might be critical, even if your symptoms haven't fully appeared yet? Can you walk us through this more in a little bit more detail?
Sure, sure. So what happens is that's a good example. So the seatbelt is very common. Again, the adrenaline kicks in at the accident. You're hyped up from the accident. You don't feel anything. You go home that night. Usually, it kicks in within a day or two. Is all of a sudden your whole body hurts. A lot of people think, well, I was just in an accident. That's normal. I'm going to give it a couple of days. A couple of days turn into a couple of weeks. All of a sudden, a couple of weeks, then you decide, well, now I'm going to go. Well, again, that delay gives ample opportunity for the insurance company to argue, well, you've waited a couple of weeks. There must be something intervening that's causing this accident or causing this pain. So it's not our accident. We're in the clear here. That's what you don't want to let them do. What you want to do is, once you start to feel that, whether it's within a day or two, at least call your doctor, call your chiropractor, call whoever your medical provider is that you're comfortable with. And even if it's just a phone call, report it and tell them, here's the parts of my body that are hurting. A lot of times with the healthcare system right now, it's difficult to get in that day or the next day, which I understand, but at least make some type of phone call or email, at least letting them know that, yes, there was a problem. It's due to an accident, like with your dad, like the example you gave. Your dad could say nothing more than, hey, I hit a deer. It was, yesterday. It's maybe not serious, but it's caused bruising, or it's caused, some pain where my seatbelt was. Can you suggest or recommend what I do? They probably wouldn't tell him to do much other than, maybe take some aspirin, take it easy. But what we found is what happens when those cases where they don't go away after a couple of days, and if you've not reported anything, then you find yourself in trouble because, again, you've given ammunition to the insurance companies that, well, you didn't report anything for a week, when in reality, it's been hurting for a week. You just haven't taken the time to say anything or tell anybody. So again, the insurance company's motto is, we don't trust anything you're saying anyway. You need to document it and you need to tell somebody. That's why I tell all my clients, as soon as it starts hurting, report it by phone calls, emails, texts, whatever it takes to get that information in a document form to your healthcare providers.
Always document. Makes
Always
complete sense.
document.
California is an at-fault state for personal injury. Can you explain in simple terms for me what that means for a victim who just got hit by another driver, if it's at fault and they got hit by another driver, who is actually responsible for paying for those initial hospital bills?
Sure. So what at fault means is you have to prove that the other person's at fault. A no fault would be, it doesn't matter who's at fault. That's the opposite of what California is. So in California, when you're in an accident, yes, the other person you do have to prove the other person's at fault, although initially the person who is injured is going to have to pay for those medical bills, but they will make a claim against the other at fault party, assuming they can they can prove it, that they can prove the other person was negligent. They will get paid back for those bills. But again, it's a process of having to go through to have to prove that against the other party.
So how quickly do insurance companies start building a defense against a claim? I'm sure maybe it's right away, but what kind of head start are they looking for in investigating this?
As immediately. As soon as they know about the claim, they are going to start building a case against the person who was not at fault, so to speak, the victim. That's why it's important not to give recorded statements, because again, that recorded statement is going to be used against you if there's any way to do so. They're going to be asking you questions again when maybe not the full extent of your injuries have kicked in. So if they ask you things like, well, does it hurt on your neck and shoulders? And maybe today it doesn't hurt there. Well, if you tell them no, they're going to use that against you so that later on, if you claim that it does now hurt, they're going to use that statement to say, well, wait a minute, I talked to you a couple of days ago, it didn't hurt there. Now it does. Must not be due to our accident. So again, that's why it's important not to give a recorded statement early on. It's they're doing everything they can to save as much money as they can. That's the whole purpose of insurance companies. They're starting their claim as early as they can. That's why it's important that even if you don't have an attorney, at least talk to an attorney so you know the process.
Great advice. What is the legal strategy when other drivers' insurance refuses to cooperate or tries to flip the script and blame the victim?
I would say get an attorney, or at least talk to an attorney, depending on how much you want to fight for your rights. And this is what I do. I mean, this is what I've been doing for 35 years. Usually when it gets to that point, when you can say flip the script or you can say lying about it. What you're really going to end up doing is probably filing a lawsuit. The reason is that at that point, the insurance company is going to believe they're insured. So if their insured is telling their story and the person who was hit is telling a different story, the only way to get it figured out is to put it in front of a 12 people and have them decide it ultimately. Now, the only way to do that is file a lawsuit. Certainly an individual can do that himself, but it's a pretty daunting process. And that's why I would say at that point, if you're getting pushback from the insurance company of a different story coming out, more than likely you're going to need to file a lawsuit, and you're probably going to need to hire an attorney at that point because it's something that's usually out of the realm of an individual being able to handle competently.
I'm curious how often these kinds of cases go all the way to court, or once that lawsuit's filed, perhaps there is a negotiation and a settlement. Are there rules about that, or a general an understanding of how those things progress?
I mean, very rarely do they ever go to trial, if that's what you're asking. I would say what we see is probably maybe 1 out of 100 or 1 out of a couple hundred cases ever go to trial. It's pretty costly to go to trial for both sides, with the cost of experts, the cost of doctors. It's pretty cost prohibitive for anybody to do that nowadays. Most cases, 95 to 99% of them get settled out of court. And it really comes down to just negotiating. And for the insurance companies, they cut it as a business deal. So really what you need to do is get an attorney who's going to fight for your rights and fight on your behalf. I tell everybody it doesn't matter to me whether it's a big case or a small case. I treat them all the same because, again, most people have never been in this situation before. So it doesn't matter to them whether it's a big case or a small case. They're all big cases to my clients. And, that's what I try and do is just treat them like, you said it earlier that your dad had an issue. I've represented my mother, my daughter, my wife, and I treat everybody like they're part of my family. It's, that's just how you have to do it. That's just that's just what I do.
And for someone buried under hospital bills or missing work, they can't afford a high quality legal representation. How does the contingency fee model work? Or how do people afford to be able to get legal representation when they need it?
That's a great part about what I do, is I'm able to work on a contingency fee. And the reason, what that means is they don't ever pay me anything up front. The only way that I get paid is if I do my job and get them a recovery. So if they come to talk with me, all the time that I work is on a contingency fee, meaning that if you sign up, we work at a percentage, and that percentage is meaning that if I go through the whole case, the only way I get paid my percentage is if I settle the case pursuant to the client's wishes. The client is always in control, always the one who makes that decision. I don't make that decision myself. What I do is I negotiate the case. Any offers that come from the other side, I present those to the client, but ultimately the client gets to decide, hey, this is a good offer, this is a bad offer, whatever the case may be. I'm always going to be there to counsel them on whether this is a good number going forward or not. What are the options? What are the issues going forward if we don't settle it? That sort of thing. But they never, like I say, they never put anything out money wise. And as far as the medical bills go, most of the time, most of the medical providers will work with me to put it on a lien, meaning, again, the client doesn't pay anything up front. They only pay once the case is settled. They are responsible for them. I can't be responsible for the bills if the case doesn't settle, but most of the time I can get the bills held off until the case settles. So that's the way that they can get quality representation without having to come out of their own pocket until the case resolves.
Brian, thank you so much for all the information. I look forward to diving deeper into personal injury with you. I think that this is something that folks really need to know. So thank you for being with me today, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. And thanks for listening to the Sacramento Injury Law Podcast. If you found today's episode helpful, please like, share, and comment to help others find these essential legal resources. And more importantly, if you have questions about your own case or need expert advice following an accident or an injury, please visit Brian at Aiken Jacobsen Law to schedule a consultation. We'll see you at the next episode.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.